What is $800 in America today? A week of groceries, a few bags from Walmart, one health insurance bill, or a full tank of gas. And it's gone. No land, no home, nothing you can touch and say, "This is mine." You work your whole life, you pay your taxes, you play by the rules, and then one day you realize an uncomfortable truth: everything you earn keeps slipping through your hands, turned into bills, service fees, and payments that never seem to end. That exhaustion isn't loud, it's quiet, and it carries with it a dangerous question. If I stopped right now, what would actually be left? Because somewhere in the world, $800 doesn't disappear. It doesn't turn into a receipt. It doesn't become a number in a banking app. It rests on the ground waiting for you to stand on it. And that's when you begin to understand something else. Land isn't an asset. It's not an investment. It's not something to flip. Land is space to breathe, time no one can rent from you, the right to say no to a life set on autopilot. In this video, we'll travel through 5 countries, not perfect, not promising riches, but still holding enough room for a human being to slow down and begin again on their own terms. 5. Bulgaria. In the United States, Europe often feels like a finished product, fully priced, fully booked, carefully curated for tourists with short vacations and long credit limits. Cities of glass and crowds where even a quiet coffee comes with noise, cost, and pressure. But that Europeth E1 Americans imagine has already been sold. What almost no one talks about is the Europe that stepped aside when money took over. The Europe that didn't modernize fast enough to become fashionable. The Europe that stayed behind in villages, vineyards, and stone houses where time was never monetized. That Europe still exists. And Bulgaria is where it quietly waits. Leave the highways. Drive past the cities. What you find are villages built of stone and patience, narrow roads that curve through vineyards and sunflower fields, wooden gates that creak open to gardens, not garages. Here, silence isn't empty, it's normal. The kind that lets you hear your own footsteps again. In these rural regions, land still sells for $700 to $1,200 an acre. Not as a marketing trick, not as a limited opportunity, just land priced as if speculation never arrived. For foreigners, ownership is possible through a local company structure. It's paperwork, yes, but straightforward, legal, and permanent. Once completed, the land is yours. No lease expiration, no hidden restrictions, just soil boundaries and time. Residency here doesn't reward speed, it rewards staying. Temporary residence leads to permanent status, and with enough years, often between 5 and 10, citizenship becomes possible. There's no golden visa rush, no inflated investment threshold. Bulgaria doesn't ask how rich you are, it asks whether you're still here. Life, once you settle in, is surprisingly light. A single person can live comfortably on $700 to $900 a month. Rent is modest. Utilities are simple. Food comes from nearby fields and small shops, not supply chains that stretch across continents. Bread tastes like bread. Vegetables have dirt on them. Wine is cheaper than bottled water, and no one finds that strange. Healthcare is another quiet reminder of old Europe. Private doctors charge modest fees. Clinics meet EU standards. Appointments feel human. You're treated as a patient, not a billing code. No negotiations. No fear of a number on a screen. But the real shift isn't financial. It's social. Neighbors don't ask what you do for a living. They don't ask why you came. They don't care about your resume. Sometimes they leave vegetables at your gate. Sometimes they don't say anything at all. You're accepted not because you explain yourself well, but because you live there. Of course, Bulgaria isn't effortless. Winters are cold and long. English fades quickly outside major cities. Bureaucracy still carries the weight of Eastern Europe. This is not polished living. It's practical. It expects patience. But that's exactly what makes it different. Bulgaria proves that Europe didn't disappear. It simply retreated from speed, from spectacle, from being constantly sold. It moved back to villages where land is still cheaper than stress, where life isn't optimized, and where a person can exist without constantly proving their value. For those willing to trade convenience for calm, Bulgaria isn't a backup plan. It's a reminder that Europe was never meant to be loud. 4. Paraguay. In the United States, residency has become a contest. Lawyers, waiting lists, thresholds that keep moving just out of reach. It feels like you're constantly proving you deserve to exist somewhere. But in South America, there's a country that never joined that race. Paraguay doesn't advertise itself. It doesn't compete for attention. And that's exactly why it works. Life here unfolds along the Paraguay River, wide and slow, cutting through a country of low houses, open skies, and streets where no one seems to be in a hurry to become something else. The pace isn't relaxed for tourists. It's relaxed because that's simply how time moves here. In the countryside, land still sells for $500 to $1,000 an acre. Not remote wilderness, usable fertile plots where people still farm, build, and stay. Foreigners can own land outright freehold in their own name. No local partners, no workarounds. If you buy it, it's yours. But what truly sets Paraguay apart isn't the land. It's how little it asks from you in return. Residency here is famously simple. A small bank deposit, often just a few $1,000s, opens the door to permanent residency almost immediately. No quotas, no age limits, no requirement to buy expensive property. You don't need to impress anyone. You just need to show up and stay. Live here genuinely for 3 to 5 years, and citizenship becomes possible. Not fast-tracked, not automatic, just earned the old-fashioned way by being present. Daily life reflects that same quiet practicality. Most people live comfortably on $700 to $900 a month. Rent is low, food is local, utilities are modest. You don't spend money trying to escape your life, you spend it living it. Healthcare follows the same pattern. Public hospitals are basic but functional. Private clinics are affordable with doctors who treat medicine as a service, not a luxury product. Paraguay isn't flashy, and it doesn't pretend to be. There are fewer entertainment options, fewer expat circles. Summers are hot, sometimes relentlessly so. This is not a country built for constant stimulation. But that absence is exactly the point. Because when no one is competing for space, space becomes generous. When no one is chasing trends, life feels stable. And when a place isn't being fought over, it quietly gives you room to stand without explanation. Paraguay teaches a rare lesson. Sometimes, freedom doesn't come from finding the best place. It comes from choosing the place everyone else overlooked. In a world where residency has become a prize, Paraguay treats it like a formality. And for those tired of competing, that simplicity feels radical. Here, nothing is shouting for your attention. And that silence, unexpectedly, is where many people finally hear themselves again. 3. Romania. When Americans think of the European Union, they picture cities, glass offices, crowded trains, regulations layered on top of regulations, a place where everything works, but nothing slows down. That image isn't wrong, it's just incomplete, because there's another side of the EU one that rarely shows up in headlines, a side where Europe didn't turn itself into a product. That side begins in Romania. Drive into Transylvania and the map changes. Green hills roll gently instead of rising in towers. Villages sit where they've always sat, anchored by churches, orchards, and narrow roads polished smooth by centuries of footsteps. Mornings arrive quietly. Smoke lifts from chimneys. Cows still cross the road without apology. This is the EU, just not the part built for speed. In these rural regions, land still sells for $800 to $1,500 an acre. Not abandoned land, not symbolic plots. Real ground close to villages where people still live full lives. Ownership for foreigners is legal and structured through a local company. It's not instant, it's not glamorous, but it's solid. The kind of ownership that holds up over time. Residency here follows a similar logic. Romania doesn't hand out shortcuts. It offers pathways. Start a small business. Establish long-term residence. Contribute quietly. Over time, often around 8 years, citizenship becomes possible. No hype, no rush. Just integration measured in years, not headlines. Daily life fits that rhythm. Most people live comfortably on $800 to $1,000 a month. Rent remains reasonable outside major cities. Food is local, seasonal, and filling. You don't shop to impress, you shop to eat. Healthcare works in parallel public hospitals for basics, private clinics for speed and choice. It's not luxurious, but it's dependable. What surprises newcomers most isn't the affordability. It's the normality. Neighbors know your name, not your job title. No one asks what you do online. They ask if you need help fixing a fence. Life here doesn't demand performance. It rewards presence. Of course, Romania carries its own weight. Bureaucracy exists, and it takes patience. Paperwork moves slowly. Stamps still matter. This is the EU, yes, but it's an older version where systems remember another era. And yet, that friction does something important. It filters out people who want everything fast. Romania isn't competing with Paris or Berlin. It isn't trying to be a destination. It's simply continuing to exist village by village, hill by hill. Romania proves a quiet truth. The European Union doesn't always look like a city. Sometimes it looks like a dirt road, a green valley, and a life where progress means staying rather than constantly moving on. For those who want Europe without the noise, Romania offers something increasingly rare: membership without erasure. 2. Morocco. From the American perspective, Africa often feels distant, too unfamiliar, too different. A place people pass through but rarely imagine staying. Yet just across the Mediterranean, there's a country where Africa and Europe quietly overlap, where the call to prayer echoes through valleys that once carried Roman roads, where mountains, markets, and old trade routes still shape daily life. That place is Morocco. In the Atlas Mountains, villages rise from the earth itself. Homes built from clay and stone blend into brown hillsides. In the late afternoon, the light softens, shadows stretch, and the sound of evening prayer settles over the valley like a pause button. Life doesn't stop, but it slows together. Here, land still carries realistic prices. In rural areas, plots sell for $600 to $1,200 an acre. This isn't speculative land meant to flip. It's practical ground used for homes, gardens, and small farms. Foreign ownership is legal and clearly defined. Titles are registered. Boundaries are known. What you buy is what you own. Residency follows a rhythm of renewal rather than approval. Most foreigners begin with annual residence permits. Renew them consistently, live peacefully, and long-term residency becomes achievable. Citizenship is difficult and rarely rushed, but Morocco doesn't pretend otherwise. It offers stability, not shortcuts. And for many, that's enough. Daily life here remains surprisingly affordable. A single person can live well on $700 to $900 a month. Rent stays modest outside major cities. Food is fresh, local, and deeply seasonal. Markets replace supermarkets. Meals are cooked slowly, shared, remembered. Healthcare follows a similar pattern. Public hospitals cover the basics, while private clinics offer faster care at prices that still feel humane. But Morocco isn't a neutral space. It carries a strong identity. This is a Muslim country with deep traditions. Daily routines bend around prayer times. Social norms are conservative in places. Life asks for respect, sometimes adjustment. It isn't designed to feel familiar. It asks you to pay attention. And that difference changes people. Because Morocco doesn't invite you to reinvent yourself. It invites you to settle. To stand somewhere between worlds. Close enough to Europe to feel connected. Far enough to live differently. Morocco teaches a quiet lesson many people don't expect. Not everyone needs a passport upgrade. Sometimes what you're really looking for is a place that lets you stay without asking you to become someone else. In the end, Morocco doesn't sell belonging. It allows it slowly, steadily on its own terms. 1. Albania. In America. When people think of Europe, they often picture Polish. High-speed trains, designer storefronts, carefully managed experiences. Places that feel finished, but also crowded, expensive, and already claimed by someone else. Albania is none of that. And that's exactly why it matters. Along the Adriatic coast, the sea still feels wide and unscripted. Fishing boats rock gently in small harbors. Behind them, pale stone mountains rise sharply, as if guarding these coastal towns from becoming something else. Cafes line the streets, serving strong coffee at prices that feel like a mistake, but aren't. This is the Balkans before refinement, before branding, before everyone arrived. In rural areas and inland valleys, land still sells for $700 to $1,200 an acre. Nothing hidden, no special restrictions. Ownership is relatively easy and transparent compared to much of Europe. Foreigners can buy legally with clear titles and manageable procedures. It's not instant, but it's understandable. And it lasts. Residency here isn't flashy. It doesn't come with slogans. You live here long enough, renew consistently, and residency follows. Over time, around 7 years, citizenship becomes possible. Albania doesn't rush you, and it doesn't test you endlessly. It simply watches whether you stay. Daily life is light on money and heavy on presence. Most people live comfortably on $700 to $900 a month. Rent stays low. Food is simple and satisfying. Local vegetables, bread, cheese, olive oil. Cafes become extensions of living rooms. Time stretches. Conversations do too. Healthcare is modest but sufficient. Public hospitals handle the basics. Private clinics cover routine care. It's not cutting edge, but it's enough. And here, enough is often the point. What surprises newcomers isn't the cost. It's the absence of performance. No one asks you to upgrade your lifestyle. No one pressures you to optimize your time. You're not surrounded by people chasing the next thing. Of course, Albania comes with trade-offs. Infrastructure is improving, but uneven. Public services are basic. High-end options are limited. This isn't a convenience-first country, but that roughness leaves space. Space to exist without being managed. Space to build without being rushed. Space to belong without being polished. Albania stands as one of the last places in Europe where life hasn't been fully adjusted for outsiders. It hasn't smoothed every edge. It hasn't monetized every view. And because of that, it still has room for people. Albania proves a quiet truth. Places that aren't finished yet often have the most space left. Not space for spectacle, but space for a human life lived simply, imperfectly, and on its own terms. $800 can't buy a dream, but it can buy the right to choose again. To choose where you wake up each morning. To choose a rhythm of life that isn't pushed by clocks or bills. To choose the feeling of standing on land you can touch, build on, and call your own without permission, without debt. 5 countries. 5 different ways to live. None of them perfect, but each one reminds us of something important. Freedom was never about owning more. It's about knowing where you stand. If you were given the choice to slow down, where would you stop? Leave your answer in the comments. And if this journey helped you see life from a different angle, tap like to support the video, subscribe to the channel, and keep exploring places where money isn't the center and freedom still has room to exist. We're not chasing distant dreams. We're simply looking for a place that feels real so we can begin again on our own terms.